Hey guys, I am Caleb with Nebraska Farm Boy. Thanks for joining me on another edition of Farm Boy in 30 Minutes. We are using a new camera and a new microphone today, so everything's probably going to be a little bit subpar quality. Subpar? Is that the word I wanted to use? I think it is. Anyways, it's going to be bad, so just know that ahead of time. It's not you. You're not hallucinating. I know you want to think the best of me. I would never use a bad camera, right? I would never use a bad microphone. Except I would. And that's what I'm doing, so I'm sorry. So anyways, that's why everything's bad today. But however, there is a lot of good things going on today. Thank you for asking how my day is going. It's going great. We've got some rain, which is always a blessing. It will help all the grass come back next year. Granted, we're coming pretty much to the end of grazing season, so it doesn't help. Well, I mean, it doesn't help this year, but farming is about the long haul, right? It's about the long game. It's not about the next play, right? So yeah, that's basically what's going on today. That's why I had time to do a video, because it put a little bit of a damper on the other projects I've been working on. Couldn't put up roof rafters today because, well, kind of wet, which I might still get around to cutting them, but we'll see. So yeah, that's my day. It's been a while since we've done one of these videos, and it's been about a quarter of a century. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure you were all awake and listening still. It's been a little over a quarter of a year. I know it's felt like a quarter of a century for all of you who have desperately wanted your Farm Boy in 30 minutes and you haven't got it for a quarter of a century. It's just makes you feel so sad. Come on, just pretend like you feel sad, all right? Just make me feel good. Pretend like you missed me, okay? Just pretend like you missed me, okay? All right. So to jump right into what the topic that I want to discuss with you today. The topic is, wow, that is a bulky intro. The topic today that I want to discuss with you today is getting started in life as a Christian young man. There, finally got it out. Getting started in life as a Christian young man. You know, this is something that I'm really passionate about because it's something that I'm trying to do right now. Okay, so you gotta hate the guy who's trying to do something and then gets on YouTube and tries to tell you how to do it. You gotta hate that guy. However, I'm not here to tell you how to grow up. I'm not here to tell you how to get started in life. I'm just a young guy who's trying to get a start in life. And you know what? The stuff I talk on here is stuff I'm passionate about. And right now, that's really been what I've been working on these last 3 months, which is why I haven't had time to make a video. And, I figured I would take you along on the journey, maybe help you out a little bit. You never know. Let's see. Where was I going to start? Oh, yes, the problem. So before we can fix a problem, we first got to understand the problem. I'm not going to go too deep into this because we've already talked about this in the past, and you don't really have to go very far to see this problem. That's the problem that young men just don't really want to grow up. There's a couple different reasons. For one, maybe they just aren't motivated. We live in a culture that allows. We live in a very wealthy culture, which allows young men to just get by, without really putting a lot of effort into life. We also live in a very, in a way it's wealthy, and in a way it's not wealthy, because we're living off debt, right? So it can also be a really difficult culture to get a start in life because, runaway inflation and all this other stuff coming down from the White House and whatnot. There's plenty of excuses for you to not get a start in life. There's plenty of excuses for you to be subpar. There you go, using that word again, subpar. Okay. There's plenty of excuses for you to just just do nothing. Okay. It's understandable, but that's not the way you learn in Christ. Okay. As young men, as Christian young men, we are called to a higher calling than to just sit around and wait for life to be placed into our lap. Are we really that entitled? Is that how we've gotten to be in America? Because I don't want to be that way. That's not how I want to live. I want to live on purpose. I want to live life on purpose. I want to live for a calling. I think that's so key. So often, so much of American life, and I'm just saying American, I think that this is really a worldwide problem. I think it's a problem with humanity because of sin. However, a problem with American life is that we are very, very entitled. And we want to do everything for ourselves, right? We want independence, and what independence means is we want to basically just be able to do whatever we want to do, and we want to serve ourselves. That's a miserable, miserable way to live, all right? As Christians, that's not how we're called to live. We don't live for ourselves. We were bought with a price, and therefore we have to glorify God with our physical bodies, with our physical lives, with whether we eat or drink or whatever we do. We are called to glorify God, and so everything we do has to be held captive to Christ. So, we have a higher calling than that, than just living for ourselves. All right, and so the result of that is that we should strive to be getting a start in life earlier than average, earlier than what young men are today. Just because it's culturally acceptable to not get a start in life till you're 30 doesn't mean that's what God would have you do. And ultimately, when you're convinced of your calling, when you do everything from the ground up for the glory of God, it's a much better way to live than living for yourself. Sorry, I feel like I repeated myself several times, and I said the same thing several times in the same way. However, I think it's important. It's worth living for Christ. All right. So if we're committed to doing that, how are we going to do that? How are we going to live out that calling? Because it's not just about motivation. There are also those physical factors that come into play. The economy's rough, right? The everything's not perfect. And, this was something that I was really wrestling through probably about 5-6 months ago. I was coming up on 18, and I've always had a dream of being kind of on my own by 19. Being financially stable. I don't know if I'm gonna make that or not, but I'm working towards that. Okay, but this was something I was thinking about, and I kind of realized. Is it really that life is that much harder to make a go of? Or is it that we are too entitled to take what God has given us? And what I mean is this. See, I had a certain picture in my mind of what my first house was going to be like. And it was not like the house that I'm now building. Yes, I'm building a house. Every time I tell people, I love to casually mention that I'm building a house. Like somebody will ask me how my week was going. I'm like, oh, yeah, my week's going good. Worked on my house. And they're like, what? Your house? So yeah, your house? It's like, yeah, my house. For yourself or for someone else? Well, those are not mutually exclusive options. It could be for both myself and for someone else. I'm just saying. However, probably what they mean is I'm being electrician's apprentice. They probably think, oh, he means he's wiring up a house. No, I'm building a house. I'm building, it's not a very grand house. However, what I realized was, okay, sure, the economy is not as good as it was 100 years ago. Money doesn't go as far as it did 100 years ago. But at the same time, we're living way beyond our means. We're living way more. We don't have needs met. We have all of our wants met, like right away because of Amazon, right? And I got thinking, what gives me the right to expect that, right? If I'm going to live out my calling for Christ, what gives me the right to think that Christ has to give me everything I want right away, immediately, when that's probably not the best thing for me, right? And so I realized, okay, maybe it's not so much about the economy. Maybe it's not so much about the outside circumstances. Maybe it's about me. Maybe I need to readjust what I see as important and live accordingly, right? And so what I've done is I've built a tiny mansion. It's not a tiny house because it's over 500 square foot. So it's a tiny mansion. It's 640 square foot nominal. But it's 2x6 walls, so that makes it a little smaller. However, that's not including the loft. So anyways, it's bigger than a tiny house, smaller than an actual house. And compared to what people were living in 200-300 years, not 300 years ago, 1 to 200 years ago, that's not bad, right? And I've been able to do that. I don't work a high-paying job. I mean, I work a reasonably paying job. I'm an electrician's apprentice, and I also am in a position where my parents allow me to pay rent by working on the farm, which is really great because I think family economies are awesome. Okay, so that's basically what I do for a living. That's not a high-paying job. That's tradesman. That's tradesman wages, right? Which it's not even full tradesman's wages because I'm an apprentice, right? You don't get paid more than you know how to do, right? So anyways, so that's how I earned the money to do that, right? Well, I also saved up money when I was growing up, but I earned basically half the money that I put into the house so far as an electrician's apprentice just this year. So what I'm trying to say here, okay, I don't want you to look at me and say, oh, Caleb is so great. No, whoops, I just said my last name. I don't say my last name on the podcast. Caleb with Nebraska Farm Boy is so great. No, that's not what I want you to get out of this at all. I only want to encourage you that this is possible. I'm stupid, and if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? So that's all I want. That's all I'm trying to say. And really, but by the grace of God, that wouldn't have worked, right? I'm not a carpenter, but somehow I've been able to get the walls framed up. By God's grace, we had a strong wind last night, and they did not fall down. So it's definitely all by God's grace. However, I'm telling you this to try and encourage you, not to discourage you. There's gonna be a whole video coming out on me building the house, in case you're wondering, in case you were curious. I don't want you to take and copy me, because your calling is always gonna be slightly different from my calling. There were several things about this house that had to be a little bit different, specifically for my calling. However, it's just an example of how you can live out that calling, and how maybe your calling isn't impossible to live out. Maybe it's just you're not looking at it quite the right way, right? So again, I think really what it boils down to is remembering that when we live for a calling, it's not for us. It's for God. And God, which is good, because God is a good and gracious God who delights in giving good gifts to his children. However, he's going to give them in the way that he wants to give them, right? And that may look like a pile of lumber instead of a pre-built house, right? Which is awesome. I've learned a lot of skills, I hope, building the house. So long as it stays up, I've learned a lot of skills. So yeah, that's one example of what I've done. Another example, maybe another struggle that you're running into, that I was running into, is maybe you're not able to start on what you feel is your calling right now. For instance, I feel called to go into law enforcement. I have two callings right now. One, go get married and raise a family, and the other is go into law enforcement. Now, am I certain that I'm going to go into law enforcement? No, because that's one of those things that really could change, because I'm going to listen to God. Whatever God wants me to do, I'm going to do that, right? And when I say listen to God, I don't mean I'm waiting for some voice to come from heaven. What I mean is God is in control of everything. He's going to direct my paths in the way that he wants me to go, so long as I am diligent in seeking after him, seeking to live for him in every area, every aspect of my life. It's not enough to just have an external pay lip service to God, or try to please God in my career and not please him in my personal life, right? It's got to be everything. God demands your all. A calling is giving your life entirely over to Jesus, right? So, where was I? Oh yes, before I got sidetracked there, what we're talking about is maybe your calling isn't something you can do immediately. And I don't know if this is something that is at all applicable to you. I just figured that since it's something that I've been going through, I figured I might as well share it with you. As far as law enforcement goes, I can't join law enforcement until I'm 21. So I've still got a couple years to go, being 18 right now. Which at first was really sad, and I thought, oh, this is terrible, now I've got 3 wasted years. No, I've been able to do so much already in those 3 years. It's been a huge blessing for me. But that doesn't mean that I'm not able to begin preparing for law enforcement. I've been working towards getting into shape. I need to get back into exercising. It feels like every time I make a video, I'm telling you, I need to get back into exercising. Whenever I'm exercising, I don't make videos. Maybe I just don't exercise enough. Yeah, so working out, disciplining my body so that I'm able to glorify God in being the best law enforcement officer that I can be, right? But then there's other areas that I've actually been able to pursue that calling. I've joined my local town's ambulance service, so EMS, and I've been going through school to be an EMT. Now, when I say school, I'm not going to college. These are little classes that are held at the fire hall. Just have to drive into town a couple miles. I live a couple miles out of town, so it's just a short little drive. I do have to do those tonight, so I have to get this video done before I have to go to classes. But anyways, that's besides the point. So that's what I've been doing to be preparing for law enforcement. Is it exactly the same? No, but it's allowed me to get experience as a first responder. It's allowed me to get experience in medical, because again, as a cop, it's not all about putting handcuffs on people. Sometimes you're going to go to those motor vehicle accidents. You're going to be the very first responder, and I want to be able to know as much trauma medical as I can. I want to be able to, and medical is something that I didn't think I would have a passion for, but going through EMT school, it's really been a blessing. I've really enjoyed medical a lot more than I thought I would, especially since as an EMT, we're basically just doing the life-saving stuff, and then we don't have to deal with all that other stuff that the hospital is going to have to deal with, which I think is fun. So yeah, that's how I've been kind of preparing for law enforcement, and I use that not to say that Caleb is something great, but just to use that as an example that God's always going to make a way. He's always going to provide a way that you can be pursuing that calling. Do not get stuck doing nothing. Do not make excuses. There's plenty of excuses that you can make, but please don't, because that's not the way you learned in Christ. We are not our own. We were bought with a price, and so we are to glorify God. And so I just urge you to not give into complacency, to not give in to victim mindset. That's really key. Don't be a victim. There's always something that God is not going to call you to do something and then not equip you to do it. It just might not be in the way that you expect. It just might not be in the timing that you expect. Maybe, again, I want to go into law enforcement, but right now I'm working with my dad as an electrician's apprentice because that's what God has given me to do. And so I'm going to be the best electrician's apprentice that I can possibly be, because that's what God has called me to do at this time. Was that something I always dreamed of doing? No. Is that something I always enjoy doing? No. But I have learned to enjoy it. I have learned to find joy in pursuing my calling as an electrician's apprentice, because if you set your mind to do something, if you set your mind to enjoy something, if you are doing all things for a calling, then suddenly everything becomes worth it, right? And everything becomes more enjoyable. And that does not mean, what I'm not trying to say there is that what I'm not trying to say is that if you're having pain or you're experiencing discomfort, that you're not following God's calling. Because sometimes God is going to call us to go through tribulations, to go through trials, and there's going to be pain through those. Building a house has not been painless. There's some very painful days and even more painful nights when I was sure the house was going to collapse. I'm just saying, or EMT school, oh man, there is some pain in EMT school. However, I do highly recommend it to anyone who's going into any medical or first responder field, or really just anyone, because it's really fun. I do have to say, EMT school has been a lot of fun. But anyways, there's multiple blessings that can come out of just taking what God gives you and running with it, if you will. Obviously, you can't do any of this on your own strength. God doesn't give you a floor plan or whatever, a master plan, and expect you to do this on your own strength. No, he's also going to supply the strength. You have to be, that's why it's not just about an outward paying lip service to God. It's not just about an outward show of service to God. No, it has to come from the heart, or else it's not going to work. It's got to be, your very desires have to be changed and oriented in such a way that now your heart cry is to serve Christ. And so I guess that's basically what I've got for you guys today. As always, we are still accepting featured questions. I gotta stop saying we, because it makes me sound like, no, I am still accepting featured questions. Generally speaking, I say we because I'm like including you. It's like you and me, we are talking, right? So I am still accepting featured questions. Granted, I haven't been doing many videos. I also haven't been getting any featured questions. So if you have a question or a topic or something that you'd like to talk, or that you'd like me to talk on or hear my opinion on, probably not a really great offer. I mean, I don't know that I would really take any time to hear my own opinion on something. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, if you want to hear me talk on something, you can leave a future question. Again, we don't get a lot of them, so it's pretty likely that I will address it in some way, shape, or form. Without any further ado, I am Caleb with Nebraska Farm Boy. We'll see you next time.